On the issue of the Auditor General report and the underutilization of office space, this came about because of the COVID period. We had planned as ODPP to collapse some of the offices within these regions and have them centralized, because my argument was that as legal officers, if we had adequate transport, then we could be able to move out. In the process of that, we had started acquiring offices that were big enough to allow for accommodation. However, we did not manage to realize that because of the COVID period, and because of that, then when the auditors came in, they felt that this space was lost. There was no actual money that was lost. This space did not belong to me or my family or friends or cronies. These were offices that were properly acquired, and I apologize if we had lost the money, but it is a decision that we had made. But because of the COVID pandemic that came in, there were certain issues that we could not, it was beyond us. And for that, we have and we'll take corrective measures. I go back to the first question by Honorable Yusuf Hassan on key strategic goals and the vision that we have. Honorable Chair and members of the committee, my vision for NIS is to advance its capabilities and the capabilities of the organization to provide timely, relevant, and actionable intelligence by building a skilled and capable workforce that is adaptable, resilient, innovative, and able to address the ever-evolving threats that we face. And the question is, how will I do that? And I've come up with a strategic plan that I hope, or that I envision, if given the opportunity by you and if I'm affirmed by the committee and Parliament. And it is centered on people, systems, and processes. And I envisage refocusing the National Intelligence Service on looking at threats. The threats that we face today as Kenya transcends two different timelines. We have a part of this country that lives in the 21st century. And here, technology can be leveraged upon in collecting intelligence and securing our national security interests. But we also live in a country and part of the countries, especially in the northern part, whether it is northeastern, whether it's Turkana, Samburu, West Pokot, where we're still trapped in the early 20th and 19th century, where there's no infrastructure, where the threats are different, and where you cannot really say the areas are at par with the rest of Kenya. And because of that, I think we need to refocus how intelligence is collected in the NIS. And with this, I envisage a human at the core. What do I mean by human? I mean by collection of intelligence that focuses on human intelligence and not collection of intelligence that solely depends on technology. Because in essence, if we are over-dependent on technology, we are not going to be able to address the various threats that we face as a country. Honorable Chair, there are certain things that I might, because I've just realized I'm still on camera, that I may not be able to expound. And I don't know how you can help me with that, whether I should proceed or...
At this point, should it say that if there is something sensitive that you will want to expound, that you probably can leave it until later when all the members have asked the questions, and you can address it towards the tail end of your...
Okay. So as I said, and I will not expound too much what I mean by human at the core, but human intelligence is collecting intelligence directly, face-to-face, through sources, agents, and informers. And I intend to refocus the systems and the human resource that we have within the NIS. In addition, the processes, we have to recognize that we live in a global world, and because of that, we are also dependent on technology and other systems that leverage and give the NIS and our national security an advantage or leaps in being able to safeguard our security. Honorable Chair, on that, I intend to configure the National Intelligence Service for it to become fit for purpose. I think on that and the strategic view that I have, maybe you will allow me to also do it in camera so that I can expound on some of these issues. Honorable Chair, there was a question from Honorable Mimosa on Shakahola. Mimosi, sorry, Honorable Mimosi.
Everyone struggles with that name. I think we will have to force you to change your name.
Or maybe I can say member of Kajiado Central. Yeah. On the issue of Shakahola. And I think there is a misconception. If I'm not wrong, NIS did give timely intelligence that initially was actioned upon. And even as ODPP, we were able to prosecute some of these individuals, especially Mackenzie. However, when we went to court, he was given bail. Probably the argument is this bail that was given was not adequate to safeguard from the atrocities that he has committed. It is not correct to say that NIS did not play its role. Probably the rest of us within the criminal justice system might have to review how to action intelligence. And this is one of the view and one of the visions that I have, that as NIS we will be able to assist the criminal justice system to convert intelligence into evidence. Because I think the intelligence that is there cannot be used in court. However, it has to be converted so that it can be actioned as evidence. On the Shakahola, Honorable Chair, I think there will have to be a paradigm shift for us as a country. For a long time, I think extremism and violence extremism was viewed from a certain prism, because terrorism has traditionally been viewed, especially in Africa, as a problem that has been brought about by Islamic extremism. I think with the Shakahola incidents, we can see that as NIS, under the government, whole of government, we will have to cast our net much wider to cover extremism that can come from either the Christian faith or Hinduism. In India, for example, we have Hindu extremism, and those have to be dealt with. I think the paradigm shift that has to come is that extremism can come from anybody, whether they be Muslims, Christians, or Hindus. And the posture would be that we will have to deal with them as such that they can be potential threats. There are adequate mechanisms in place. I think NIS, NCTC, and other, NCTC stands for National Counterterrorism Center, and other security organs have adequate programs in place. We have what you call the CVE programs, that is countering violent extremism, and we only need to apply that across board. Since the infrastructure exists, I think the only paradigm shift that we need to do is now focus on all religions and understand that they have potential of becoming extremists and committing crimes that are beyond. If you look at Shakahola, I think we are going to over 300 bodies, and we have still not finished. The sum of it is that it is at par with some of those organized terrorism attacks that we've had. So it is a problem, And it is a problem that I, if given the opportunity by this House, will deal with family and effectively. Thank you, Honorable Chairman.
We'll take another three from Honorable Kwenya, Honorable Kalabamisi, and Honorable Krima.
Thank you, Chair. And I also want to join my colleagues in congratulating Noordin Haji on his nomination by the President to head this very important department of National Intelligence Service. And I must say that I am one person who is well pleased with your family history, and especially your father, to start from there, being a civil servant. He served at one time in our county, then district, when you were a young man. I was an old man then. And looking at your history and your trajectory, seems like we would be right to say in your father's footsteps. Sky may be the limit if this committee is going to approve you. But your stint in ODPP, Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, something caught my eye. You are the accounting officer, right? Now, and some question has been just been raised here on the issue of some audit query. What if, I don't know whether you thought about this as a leader who would want to be very transparent within your tenure as a DPP. What if at one point the report of the Auditor General qualifies their report and an investigation is carried out by the relevant authorities, and then recommend for prosecution to be carried out? How successful would that be? Haven't you felt like you were conflicted to some extent? Because honestly, having a case against your office, who would prosecute? And this has brought some soft underbelly in terms of the office of ODPP and accountability, and to the extent that if someone is found culpable, and especially your office where you are the accounting officer, what would we happen? Have you as a good leader given any recommendation as to how we'd get ourselves or get ODPP out of that quagmire whereby the accounting officer is the prosecutor? Otherwise, I must say everything else. I am satisfied with the questions that you've answered. But on this one, I would want to hear, because you get into an office with a bigger budget, and honestly, you must give yourself into that level of audit and accountability. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Messi.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, first of all, I want to appreciate and recognize your heavy academic credentials and your education history. I want to take you back to where you started. You said you formulated the decision to charge, meaning you are responsible for all the cases that go to court, right? Then why did you say you were forced to charge without sufficient evidence when the decision to charge is actually yours? And whether the merit or demerit of it is neither here or there. What is important is the trust. How can Kenyans trust you that you will not drop high-profile intelligence the way you dropped high-profile cases, whether it's for political expedience or otherwise? Then secondly, Chair, also by your own words, you've recognized the importance of international system and said that the global world as an external actor is also important to the national interests. So allow me to label you as a liberalist. And therefore, I'll give you an example of the US journalist who was arrested in Russia on charges of espionage, ostensibly by trying to obtain classified defense information. This was a journalist. Where do you draw the line between free media and information gathering? Because we exist in a convoluted kind of international system where there is free flow of information, too much freedom of express gathering of information. So where do you draw the line? This is intelligence gathering, and this is a free media. And I've not been able to get the file, so hope you don't mind asking what is your net worth in terms of what is your collectively net assets juxtaposed against your net liability, and what is the source?
Honorable Kramer.
Thank you, Chair. First and foremost, congratulations for the our ODPP to have been nominated for the position of the DG NIS. We hope that is going to hold it with that integrity which it has been having in case we approve him. And my question is regarding case number 257 of 2017, criminal case Mombasa, Chanzo Courts. In this case, one ODPP, your anniversary mentioned there. You are so much aware because I know you must have gone through the judgment, sorry. And in page 45 of the same judgment, and page 46 and 47, your anniversary mentioned there. You are including the officers who were in operation at that moment. And you see, in the same case, they said that quite a lot of money was taken away from the accused persons when the charge was done, and whatever was presented as part of the evidence was not the amount which was said that it was recovered.
How much money?
20,600,000 shillings.
20 million was misappropriated, or?
That's what was with the accused persons.
No, I think Honorable Chair, if he can read.
That's page 46.
Yeah, it is only he claims 2 million
For the judgment. And then what presented in court, it is 18,500,000
instead of.
20,600,000.
Thank you. I wanted you to clarify that.
Don't be jitter about it. Please wait for that question, because I was to come over to that one. You know, that matter was presented before the court, and at the end of the day, the court did not find the accused persons guilty. And now, as part of the group which was investigating the case, did you find it necessary to advise the prosecution to launch an appeal against the judgment which was arrived to by the magistrate court in Chanzo? That's one. And if you did so, what were the results? Because I don't have any further judgment to that effect. That is one. Secondly,
Let's be brief, Honorable Chair.
yes, secondly, when it comes to cases, Chairman, they are different from these other general questions. Secondly, there is this idea of, which have been asked by my colleagues, of dropping cases, criminal cases, against high-profile citizens of this republic. And during the time of which I would like to get it from you today, during the time of the arrests, it used to be done on Fridays, kamata, Fridays. Were you the one who was authorizing the arrests after going through the evidence, the files, because you are in charge of taking the matters to court? Was there any other authority which was taking the matters to court other than you? Because as the part of the Constitution, the article which you quoted, it is in that article implied that in case the DPP who is in the ODPP who is in the office miscarries out the evidence or injustice to the parties concerned, whoever will be incoming is the one to drop after seeing that there is no evidence or there was victimization or something like that. What was the essence of why you now, after carrying out, in criminal cases, first and foremost, what comes before you take the matter to the court, is a statement from the witnesses. Once you going through them and get satisfied that there is a substantive case of which can sustain a conviction, of which then later you came and you include many cases. That's all, Chairman.
I wanted to pick the mind of honorable members in relation to the core mandate of national intelligence, particularly related to classified information. And if you will agree with me, is that he can drop that until the tail end of this interview. Then at that point, then I'll ask the media to leave, and you can ask all the sensitive questions in regards to particularly national intelligence service. Is that agreeable?
Great.
Good. So if you have any question that touches on how national intelligence operates and you feel like it's a classified information, ignore it for now, and then later I will ask the media to step out and you can respond to them. You may proceed to respond.
Thank you, Chairman. I will start with the last question by Honorable Kirima on case number 257. Honorable Chair, first I would want to submit a search certificate that was signed by one Stephen Vika Mangira. And that search certificate, the counting of the money was conducted in front of him. And he signed that the money that was recovered from him in the boot of his car was 18,500,000. 18,500,000. And then I will also submit the statement that he himself voluntarily signed, where he says he had only 18,500,000 shillings in the boot of his car. So when he comes and says that it was 20 million, I think that is very wrong. In addition, we took him to court under the asset recovery, and it was very clear from this judgment, which I shall also submit, that Mr. Mangira was found to be a pathological liar, because he kept on changing the amounts of money that he says he had. And the ruling is here. In fact, the 18,500,000 was forfeited to the government. In addition, more money that he had in the account that he could not explain was also forfeited to the government. And I have the ruling here, and I will submit it to the committee. So those allegations are completely unfounded, and they are malicious, and they are meant to just taint my image. But I will submit all this for the committee to have a look at. The idea and essence of dropping cases or withdrawing cases is a constitutional requirement where there is abuse of processes. And as I said, I want to let this rest, but maybe I have to explain where there are abuse of processes, and this comes to the attention of the DPP. The Constitution actually envisages that he will take action on that, and that you cannot just sit pretty and say you will wait for the next DPP to deal with it. My conscience will not allow me to allow miscarriage of justice. Furthermore, Honorable Chair, people are trying to portray that it is only these high-profile cases that we have withdrawn. The statistics that I have, which I shall also table here, is that in 2017, before I was even DPP, 11,188 withdrawals were undertaken. 11,188 withdrawals. In 2028, 2029, there were 10,600. In 2019, 2020, there were 8,609. In 2020, 2021, there were 18,750. And in 2021-2022, there was 25,716. Some of these withdrawals were made, while the figures have gone up, were made because of the COVID period, where we had gone out to decongest the remand prisons, which were full of petty offenders. So, the issue of withdrawal is not something that should be, packaged in a certain way that we were just benefiting the high and mighty, or for political reasons. I can assure this committee that is not the case. Furthermore, I want to remind the committee that decision is not made by me solely. The magistrate, the judge, when we go before them, have the final say, and you can refer to the Constitution. So, I think, Honorable Chair, let us agree that there are safeguards that were put by the Constitution, and these safeguards are working, and that there are no abuses of processes. And where somebody feels that there are abuses, or they feel that maybe we have gone beyond our powers, the courts are there. You can go and have administrative review. You can go and challenge the ODPP as an office. And also, if there is evidence that I have been compromised in any way, then that also can be tabled. But I want to assure this House that the withdrawals we made was based on the evidence that was tabled to us, and reviews that were made openly and independently. Honorable Chair, on the question by the Honorable Member of Kinang on the ODPP and the audit report in case we are investigated, I think the Constitution is also very clear under Section 158 on the removal of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And I think the safeguards are there that have been provided both in the Constitution and in the ODPP Act. Maybe if the House feels that they need to strengthen that, then it can happen. But it would have to be within the legal framework that allows for the DPP to be able to discharge their duty efficiently and effectively. So, for example, now if I move to NIS and this audit finds that I have done something wrong, then I can be investigated and prosecuted. But also, the other way of looking at it is that the prosecutor, the DPP, after the end of his tenure, can still be prosecuted, like in other countries where this is done for offices like the ODPP or the President or other offices that are sensitive. I want to assure you that as a Director of National Intelligence Service, I will be transparent, and I will observe Chapter 6 of the Constitution. Honorable Chair, the last 3 years, or 4 years actually, the ODPP has gotten clean bill of health from the Auditor General. Actually, a sterling performance, with even awards from the Kenya Revenue Authority. And this one issue of office space, we have also written to the Auditor General to ask for the indulgence to come and do a proper audit and see our point that it is the COVID period that necessitated this and brought this problem. Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think there was a Honorable of Shinyalo on the issue of how can Kenya trust me. First of all, I want, sorry, is it Shinyalo?
Yeah.
Saboti, sorry.
For Saboti.
Saboti, yes. Sir.
Yeah.
Sorry, sir.
Please don't drop my question.
Saboti. First of all, I was never forced to charge. Never. But you know, these questions are forcing me to say some things that I wouldn't have wanted to say. And I have written to the Inspector General of Police for investigations to be instituted, because some of the investigations that were done and that were presented to us to make the decision to charge, we discovered later on that they were not properly done and investigated. In fact, some, and Honorable Chair, I'll say this with the hope that it will not, that you'll be able to understand why I'm a bit hesitant. Some of the document examined by the document examiners at the DCI office were done fraudulently by the officers through coercion by their in charge. Do you know the implication of this, Honorable Chair? Is that a lot of those cases can then be challenged on the basis that those documents that were examined were not examined properly by the document examiner. And as a prosecutor, we do not have the expertise to look at those documents. We trust that the person who is making that document examination is a trustworthy person, and that that person is honest and a person of integrity. But what happened during this period is that some of those documents were tampered with. For example, to say that this signature did not belong to the Honorable Chair, and therefore this title is not his. Yet that signature belongs to the Honorable Chair. But as prosecutors, we take that report on face value. So, Honorable Chair, I will indulge you, please, to understand why we had to make some of these decisions. And some of them are in court, and you can go and look at them. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
We will take another set of three, Honorable Kandia, Honorable Kasalu, and Honorable Triza. Kamata Friday.
Yes, Friday. Sorry.
And the Chair,
okay,
Chair,
but, let me make it
Chair,
clear.
in the same vein, you also forgot one of my questions. Yeah.
Just respond to those two.
Just go through your notes, you'll see.
It's okay. Just get to Kamata first. I think it is.
We make the decision to charge, but when and how the arrests are made, that lies with the DCI, not the DPP. We don't have officers when we don't do that.
Thank you. So we go to Honorable Kandia, Honorable Kasalu.
Sir, can you just clarify which? Is it about the trust?
Not, you've already tackled the one on trust. It's now up to me to trust you. But the international one,
system,
yeah.
yes. Okay, it was on the other page. Okay, the line between free media and gathering intelligence. I think that will be defined with the kind of intelligence that we collect. Of course, we will analyze the evidence that is brought and see whether indeed that person is undertaking espionage. Of course, we respect free media, and that will be one of the planks of my leadership, if given that opportunity to serve as an NIS Director General. Espionage can be undertaken through what you call cover. So somebody can come as a media practitioner, they can come as a doctor, they can pretend they are businessmen, they can pretend to be anything, yet they are collecting intelligence. As NIS, and in the Act and the Constitution envisages that the role of NIS is to collect security intelligence and counterintelligence. And the NIS has a whole division called counterintelligence that collects intelligence and safeguards Kenya against espionage. So if a person has taken the cover that they are media practitioners, we will get the intelligence, and we will table the evidence so that that person can be stopped and prosecuted in a court of law for undertaking espionage. We live in a global system, and we have to interact with the international community. In fact, where countries have similar aspirations and who share similar visions as Kenya, we are bound to work with them, even in the collection of intelligence, because it adds value and it gives us that multiplier effect of being effective in safeguarding our national security interests. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
So, Honorable Kandie, Honorable Irene Kasalu, and then Honorable Teresa.
Thank you, Chairman. Mine is I want to congratulate the nominee for the offer he has been given by the President. But one question which I want to ask him is, I don't know whether, many countries nowadays, in terms of intelligence, they are no longer interested in, for example, spying on Kamamusi or Wangare. They are more interested in spying for economic benefits. What will you do as Director General to make sure that we go for intelligence which will give our country the input to make sure that we grow our economy faster? Two, very many people are complaining that that you did very little in your office as ODPP in terming corruption. And I don't know whether you know that two things can break a country. One, insecurity. Two, corruption. So what will you do to advise the executive in making sure that they look at those, or what will you do in as a Director General to help in terming those two items, corruption and insecurity?
Honorable Kasalu.
Thank you, Chair. And first, I would like to congratulate the nominee. And of course, again, congratulating is well read. I'm a person who likes education, so when I see somebody of his caliber, I'm encouraged. So when it comes to his, I've listened to him, I've read the papers that will be given here, and in terms of experience, in terms of books, I think he's suitable for the job. But when we come to his integrity issues, he has mentioned earlier, as he was responding to some of the questions from my colleague, that his image may have been dented because of the many withdrawals. And he has really tried to explain himself. And most of the time, I just see you trying to shave and put blame on other offices. And clearly, I'm sure you know that the public don't have a lot of confidence in yourself. And we feel that you are getting this job because you're being rewarded by the President. Are you being rewarded, Mr. Haji? And Chapter 6 requires you to instill trust in the public. What do you plan to do to make sure that you are able to salvage that, because it's already down the drain? Secondly, the agency of NIS is an independent office and requires you to act as such. So how do you plan to cooperate with the executive and still be able to remain and to have the office being autonomous and doing your job without the interference of the executive? And finally, how big do you think cybercrime is in this country, and what do you plan on mitigating it? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair, I would like to congratulate our nominee, Mr. Noordin Haji. You are aware of the corruption that is in this country. Money laundering has become rampant, but we haven't had anyone who has been brought to book. Please tell this committee how you have impacted this country in a positive way to fight corruption as the immediate former Director of Criminal Investigations. Thank you, Chair.
You may respond to the three, then we'll take another set. I've not forgotten you, Mheshimiwa.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think there was a question by Honorable Kandia on economic espionage and how we can help in growing our economy faster. I think the role of the NIS is very clear that we collect intelligence. What we will do is ensure that we collect timely, accurate intelligence to advise the government and the whole of government on how best we can further and strengthen our economic position as a country and as an anchor country within the region. On the issue of corruption and insecurity, I think he was saying that I did little in terms of corruption, and I beg to differ. I did a lot, as I had said earlier. It was during my tenure that the highest ever fined case was achieved during my tenure. And it is not the only one. There were about 4 cases that broke the ceiling in terms of the fines and the sentences that we were able to get as ODPP. In addition, I think it was during my tenure that we managed to bring at fore how best we can deal with corruption. It was during my tenure that we were able to get rulings from court that governors will have to step aside from court and not serve once they're charged. And we were able to go all the way to the Supreme Court to get a definition of who is a public and who is a state officer. And all this have had a positive impact. In addition, it was during my tenure that we were able to bring about prosecution-guided processes, including bringing the concept of follow the money. And I think the fact that a few cases were withdrawn, this was to reset how we can make more effective prosecutions in terms of fighting corruption cases. On issue of, on the question that Honorable Kasalu brought in relation to my integrity, I think I beg to differ with her. There might be a section of Kenyans who feel that my integrity has been dented, but I don't think it's everybody. And I think I have tried my best in the circumstances. And I'm saying again, I stand by the withdrawals that I made, and I make no apologies whatsoever. And that is part of being a person of integrity. The other question that you asked is how I'm going to instill public trust. I think I have observed Chapter 6 as the Director of Public Prosecution. If you pick any of the values under Chapter 6 in relation to integrity, I don't think there is even one that you can fault me on. The issue of withdrawal is a constitutional power that I was given. Nobody under the Constitution can come and question those powers. And if anybody wants to question how that decision was made, then there is the court of law. I have not seen anybody, except one case on which I think we will discuss at some point. None of those was I taken to court to be challenged on the decision that I made. There are sweeping statements that have been thrown at me, none of which have the requisite statements, including accusing me of saying that I was coerced and I made the decision under duress. At no point did I say that. Actually, what I said is I was coerced, but I did not succumb to any coercion whatsoever. And the kind of coercion that was meted at me, my house was broken into, was taken to court severally, over 20 cases within a span of 2 years, and many other things that I cannot discuss here, but some of which I think that they have been alluded to. And this is not a gift, as you are trying to say, or a token from His Excellency the President. Because National Security Intelligence Service is not an organization that you can just wake up and say you're going to gift somebody, or a token because of the good work somebody has done. I think a lot of thought was put into this, and His Excellency the President must have seen the value of having me as his nominee, the director, as a Director General of National Intelligence Service. I think there was a question by Honorable Wanjiru on. Sorry, maybe if you can. Sorry. I think I have addressed, because all the three questions are revolving around that. Unless there's a question of.
No, it's the same. You pretty much answered almost the same, but of course, using. You've responded without necessarily responding to her directly, but it's the same answer. We'll take last team. This one you can take the 4. So, Honorable Sloya, Honorable Abdul Kadir, Honorable Ikana, and then finally Honorable Umi.
Yeah. My name is Lawyer, like I said, and mine is just very simple. In your working as a DPP, you may have met friends and enemies, because you got to have worked with various agencies like the NIS, the police and DCI. My question is, how would you handle a situation where you need to work with someone who has a different opinion than yours? Then 2, in trying to refocus on how intelligence information is collected by NIS, how would you determine if a source of intelligence information is trustworthy? Thank you.
Honorable Kadir.
Thank you, Chairman. And Noordin, welcome once again to this parliamentary committee. And firstly, let me congratulate you for your nomination to this critical office. I know you had a checkered career within this, and later on DPP. So I think it is with this great appreciation of the track record that His Excellency President has, out of his wisdom, decided to nominate you to this position.
Dr. Karim, please just go straight to the question.
My question is, based on your inside knowledge of NIS, please identify 2 areas in its present operations that you believe to be addressed in order to obtain smarter, effective outcome. The operation that you think that can be changed, the current operation. The other one is this country is facing huge threats from terrorism within the country and outside. Al-Shabaab, Uhakiki, drug breachers. What is your plan for more efficient intelligence gathering should you be approved? The other question is, as you said earlier, most of the cases of breach of security in this country do have information, and they give the information to security agencies. What is your plan to strengthen the existing coordination mechanism between NIS and other security organs, especially lower administrative structures like counties, sub-counties, and even ward level? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Haji. Now this is Freddy Kana, Member of Parliament, Shinyalu. I have a quick question. One of the emerging security threat to this country is tax evasion. And I think the president has been on the forefront in trying to fight these people who are evading taxes and avoiding their share of national duty in developing this country. I want to know if this committee approves you to be our next head of intelligence. What strategy do you have in place to support the president and, of course, the nation in addressing the issue of tax evasion? Then finally, I've had a look at your CV, and I must say I'm impressed with the meteoric rise in positions of on promotions. But of course, out of curiosity, I see between 2013 and 2016, you are promoted 3 times. And some of the promotion actually came in a span of less than 6 months. So just out of curiosity, maybe just to clarify to myself and Kenyans, to what extent that this will be attributed to your good family name and, of course, connections and influence.
I think the last question, in all fairness, is extremely unnecessary, and I will guide that you did not respond to that. Honorable Ume, please.
Thank you, Chair, and once again, I'd like to congratulate the nominee. I've been following the good work you did throughout your term at the office of DPP, but the office you intend to, or the office you seek to occupy currently, is an office that in the eyes of the public has lost a lot of trust. And the many cases of EGK, especially the extrajudicial killings, and myself, from where I sit, my uncle, I lost him to EGK in 2019, and up until now the case has never gone anywhere. So how do you intend to address these issues, especially to regain the trust in the eyes of Kenyans? Thank you.
And just as a rider, so that Honorable Ikana doesn't feel that I was a bit harsh on him, is that you're a member of parliament. Tomorrow your son shall not be denied an opportunity to be a member of parliament merely because they carry the Ikana name. So I think that that is on that note, and I don't want us to escalate beyond that.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. You know, some of these questions we are asking not on our own behalf. We are asking because the people who are asking, some of the people we are representing, have those questions on their mind.
But
so it's only good that it is clarified.
It's a criteria that Parliament uses during this vetting, and I'm sure you had seen it earlier. Academic qualification and the rest, you are aware of them. Those people are not aware of them. Proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And I would want to first of all correct Honorable Ikana. I was not promoted 3 times consecutively. Please look at the CV properly. Don't confuse holding different offices, being transferred from one office to the other, as being promotions. Those are not promotions. I held different offices in different departments under the same level. So I was never, and I have never been promoted. I believe I am a man who is self-made, but I thank my late father for creating a foundation for all of us, and that is not a crime. I think it is something that I'm proud of, and I'm not going to hide that I'm the son of the late Honorable Mohammed Yusuf Haji. On the issue of emerging threats, and you're talking about tax evasion, I think as NIS, again, what we will do is provide timely intelligence that is well analyzed and that will add value, and that will be intelligence that is actionable, which means KRA can use it to recover tax evasion or taxes that have been evaded. And I think that is the best thing that NIS can do. Of course, we will also try to leverage on technology to ensure that we are able to give the capability to the government to get the required taxes so that we can be a country that is self-sufficient to carry its own economic activities effectively. On the question by Honorable Abdi, two areas that can be changed. I think I had tried to expound on the gap between parts of Kenya, that we have a part of Kenya that is well developed, that is in the 21st century, that is dependent on technology, and we have parts of Kenya that are behind. There is no infrastructure. The kind of threats that we are faced with are traditional, old threats, and not new emerging threats that other parts of Kenya are doing. And what I would want to do as director, if given an opportunity to be the Director General of NIS, I'm sorry, I think I'm very eager to and forget, but if I'm confirmed by this Honorable House, I would want to reconfigure NIS to be fit for purpose. What do I mean fit for purpose? I mean that we should have a national intelligence service that can, transcend these two continuums. One that is in the 21st century and another that is in the 20th or 19th century. And the threats are varying and different. And the best way we can do this is to ensure that we are able to leverage on technology. Yes, there has been a lot of concentration on cyber threats. We have had a lot of cyber attacks, but we must be able as NIS to forestall those attacks. And one way of doing this is, for example, having the capacity of not only defending ourselves. I think for a long time we have been concentrating on how best we defend ourselves against such threats, but also thinking outside the box of how can we also be offensive? How can we have capabilities that allow us to go beyond and do activities that other nations are able to do? One other thing that I would want to put to deal with the other side of the other side of the country is being able to collect human intelligence from the ground. Because if you have a place that doesn't have infrastructure, there's no way you're going to wholly depend on technology. If you look at what happened in Iraq, for example, there was an intelligence gap by the US that depended wholly on technology to gather intelligence. So what I'm saying is that we will have to have the human resource that is so diverse that we can be able to go and collect intelligence from a cattle rustler somewhere in West Pokot or Samburu. That we don't have officers who are sitting pretty with suits and looking at computers and laptops, yet we have a problem, a huge problem in another part of the country that requires us as an intelligence service to posture differently. What I'm saying is that as an intelligence service, we will be forward-looking. We will be proactive. We will ensure that we go to the ground to collect the requisite intelligence that would add value to our national security. I think there was a question by Honorable Umi. Sorry, Honorable Lawyer first.
Honorable Sloya.
Sorry. Sorry, sir. Honorable Sloya. On the issue of partnerships, I think partnerships are going to be critical, and it is one of the planks that we're going to have to work with. When I was in the ODPP, I was elected the Vice Chair of the National Council on Administration of Justice because of the input that I had put in helping the Chief Justice in building synergy and coordination and collaboration within the criminal justice system. I was also elected as the President of the Eastern African Association of Prosecutors because of the partnership that ODPP managed to bring between Kenya and other Eastern African countries. So partnership is going to be key. And there is no way as NIS we are going to be able to work. For example, the threat of terrorism requires us to work in concert with other nations, both regionally and internationally. So the issue of partnership is going to be key, and we are going to ensure that we leverage, of course, the underlying what we're going to place importance on is the kind of cooperation we are going to undertake. We are going to evaluate it. Does it add value to our national security interests? If they do, then we will engage. We will place our national interests first. So partnership, Honorable Chair, is going to be key, and it is something that we are going to strengthen in NIS. The question by Honorable Umi on EJK. First, I want to I'm looking for the right word, but to condole with you and say sorry for the loss of your uncle. Of course, EJK is unconstitutional. It is illegal, and it is something that hopefully, if given this chance under my leadership, we will not condone or entertain. We have, even under ODPP, undertaken quite a number of investigations to investigate those people who have been involved in EJKs. But we have also prosecuted quite a number of police officers who have been found guilty of extrajudicial killing. In fact, under my tenure, we were able to bring quite a number of cases, over 150 cases against police officers, rogue police officers. Of course, this is not to say that all police officers are rogues. There are usually elements within the police that have to be dealt with, because if they are allowed to continue, they dent the image of the police and the government itself. And on those occasions, together with the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, we were able to bring over 150 cases, and we were able to get quite a number of convictions against police officers that were brought. And it is during my tenure also, Honorable Chair, that we were able for the first time to bring a case in court against what we call command responsibility. That it can no longer be tolerated that only junior police officers are being arrested, yet those seniors who gave them instructions do not take responsibility. So for the first time as the office of the ODPP, we have brought cases against senior police officers who are involved in killings of innocent Kenyans. Honorable Chair, of course, the Bills of Rights under the Constitution is very clear, and as the nominee, and hopefully if I'm given the opportunity, I pledge to this committee that I will observe them and ensure that NIS operates within the confines of the Constitution. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
We'll take from Honorable Vice Chair. Honorable Kallo, yes?
Not really a question, Chair, just a further clarification. I just wanted to get a clear clarification from the nominee. Earlier on, you said the 4 petitions that were filed against you, were they withdrawn, or did you subpoena the court?
Thank you. There were actually 20 cases, and they were all withdrawn. There is one that was a petition. There's a difference between petition. All petitions were withdrawn, and all cases in court against me were withdrawn. And I did not petition. It is the petitioners themselves who withdraw. There is one petition last week, I think you must have seen, by Transparency International, that was taken to the Public Service Commission. I think that is the only one. The Public Service Commission is yet to communicate to me.
Okay, Honorable Vice Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Some of my questions probably much later will touch on in camera. I'm sure we have exhausted for the next phase, probably as the chair directed, if you go to on camera, we'll be able to go. But first, congratulations, Noordin, for the nomination and the trust that the President has in you. Most of the things have been covered, but one aspect is about the mandate of NIS. Calls for high degree of dependence on the organization's independence. If approved as the DG, how will you balance this between cooperation with the executive while maintaining the agency's autonomy, impartiality, and commitment to national security? The next one, and I'm sure you have talked about, is the issue of HUMINT, that is the human intelligence. And I'm sure you reckon that NIS has become too elitist. That is the observation, and I'm sure most Kenyans believe so. And as you said, most parts of this country are not equal. There are ones in 21st century, others are in 20th and 19th century. And how are you going to revamp that aspect of being too elitist, even in where elitism is not required? The other aspect is on a rider that Honorable Omi has mentioned. And, as per the National Security under Article 238 of the Constitution, requires compliance with the law, and is in relation to the issue of extrajudicial killings, especially cases related to terrorism. How are you, if approved by this committee and the National Assembly, are you going to deal with the compliance of this, especially your institution complying with this law? Thank you.
Please combine with this last one from Honorable Wangari.
Chair, I actually didn't want to follow up that time so that every member gets a chance to ask. But I didn't get an answer of what you have done so far in the issue of proliferation of small arms, especially in the north and the Kerio Valley. And there's also something else that you have said, maybe a clarification, that your office, in terms of the withdrawal of cases, had no capacity to actually ascertain the credence of the documentation that was submitted to you, and you relied on trust. So how then did you figure it out eventually? And what does that mean to the cases that were not withdrawn, that some even got convictions? Does that put it now to the balance of the credibility of the cases, which could even be more than the ones that were withdrawn?
Proceed, Mr. Haji.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The question by the Vice Chair on how we will relate with the executive, if I'm not wrong. I think the Constitution is very clear. We have the National Security Council, where all the members happen to be the executive, but NIS also has the National Intelligence Council that oversights it. It has membership there. But of course, this House itself, this committee itself, is envisaged under Section 65 of the NIS as trying to bring balance so that it is not a complete executive affair of the executive. I think as much as NIS is an independent organ, independent in the sense that it's supposed to give intelligence and it's supposed to be apolitical, it is still part of the executive arm of government. I think the most important thing is being able to observe the Constitution from issues of chapter 6, ensuring that there is integrity in what we are doing, and the balance is actually brought about by the different oversight bodies that exist. As a NIS, we will ensure that the intelligence we produce is appropriate, accurate, and timely, and that it adds value, and that it is not there to be used for the benefit of any arm of government over the other. And I think from the question I can discern that the fear is the NIS being utilized to sort out political issues. What I want to say is that I assure you that NIS will continue being professional and ensuring that the intelligence that is produced is actually used for the benefit of the national security of this country. In any case, the Constitution is very clear that the mandate of NIS is to collect security and counterintelligence. The issue of HUMINT, I think, I'm sorry if I sounded like I was saying NIS is too elitist. I think in NIS we have an array, but we can still be able to build on the diversity of the human resource that we have, so that it reflects the threats that we are likely to face. And in that way, I think the recruitment processes will have to be relooked at in terms of who are we targeting. We will have to target a cadre that is professional in terms of the requirements and the professional gaps that we need to fill in. But we will also have to have a cadre, as I said earlier, that can be able to cover the different facets of this country. And this therefore means maybe we will have low cadre in the sense that we might have to recruit people who finished Form 4, and we should not maybe confine ourselves to individuals who only have diplomas and degrees. So in that way, we will try to cast the net much wider and get a bigger spectrum of our population. On the issue of EJK, I think first of all I would want, and I hope it is not controversial, but the cases that I have dealt with when it comes to EJK, there are maybe just one that I can think of where officers from NIS have been mentioned. Most of the other EJK cases cannot really be attributed to NIS. But that is something that I want to say. Because NIS plays a critical role, especially in multi-agency formations and teams, and tries to add value in how counterterrorism is being dealt with. I think what I want to commit myself with here is that we shall ensure that at least the input of the NIS is to safeguard the human rights of each and every Kenyan. And the Constitution envisages whether you're a criminal or not. Of course, there are certain instances where if it is combat or something that the force that has been used is commensurate with the threat, that is something that then can be explained. But what I want to commit myself here is that we shall be an institution that observes the Constitution and the human rights of each and every individual. On the issue of proliferation of some small arms, I think in relation to the work that I was doing under counter-organized crime, proliferation of small arms fell under what you call the internal division, not under COC. However, maybe what I can address is, if I'm given the opportunity, probably what I can do. And with this, I think being able to have an array of possibilities of collecting intelligence will be important. But a lot of the proliferation of small arms occurs within our borders. I think as Director General, if confirmed as Director General of NIS, we will have to ensure that we are able to cover these areas adequately through collecting of intelligence, as I said, HUMINT. And a lot of this can actually be attributed to the fact that the arms are coming in these areas that have no infrastructure, and then finding themselves into Kenya. But also international cooperation and regional cooperation will be key. to ensure that we are able to deal with the proliferation of small arms. Regional instability has meant that there's a rise in this. With the instability in Sudan, in South Sudan, in Ethiopia, already in Somalia that we have had to live with for a long time. This is likely to go up. But as I said, we will try and configure ourselves in such a way that we can be able to surmount this problem. I think one of the roles of NIS, which I would also want to enhance, is being able to forecast the future and gear ourselves to threats that are likely to come up. And the proliferation of small arms is one likely threat that is going to grow, and it will be a problem for us. I sometimes say we are in the wrong neighborhood. We are a strong democratic country that is relatively peaceful, but we have very unstable, in a very unstable neighborhood. But that actually means that we must redefine how we deal with threats that are likely to come to us. On the issue of documents and the credence, this came about by affidavits from the officers themselves. They came up, wrote, and said that there's a problem here, and they pointed out what those problems are. And that's how we were able then to review the cases, withdraw them, and actually what we have done is we've taken all those cases back to the DCI to reinvestigate and give us a final view of how these cases should either proceed or the files being closed. We have not closed the files. What we have done is we have returned so that they can be reviewed, and that evidence can be tabled to us. Which means when an officer has tampered with the documents, then they will, the files will come back and will prosecute those officers. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
I think after this far, you've really tried to stay very professional in the response, particularly on issues that I will have initially thought will have touched on the core mandate of national intelligence without necessarily divulging much of the operations that are sensitive and classified for that matter. So unless there is a member who has a question that will warrant the media to leave, then you can raise your hand, and as I do that, let me also say that, because I've not been able to ask a question, but let me give you in a form of a comment, that there has been a multi-agency team before that comprised some officers from the National Intelligence Service that were used to execute political assignments. I have been a victim personally, but I'm not saying that you go after them. All I'm saying is that if this committee accords you favor, try as much as possible to remove the officers who taint the name of a very professional National Intelligence Service. Make it as professional as possible. Debunk the mystery that surrounds intelligence gathering and officers of intelligence, people who are in hot pursuit of politicians or senior people or just ordinary people should not be in your service. Let you have your professional service linked from the political class, execute your job of gathering information and giving intelligence to the head of state and for the betterment of our country. Secure our borders, that is one of your jobs. Make sure that there's enough information for any form of extremism from any religion, and that is the advice that I will, or something that I would want to add to what my honorable colleagues have said here. So, Honorable Mamosi, if it is a question that is classified, I can ask the gentleman.
Mr. Chair, it's just to answer on what you've asked, and my opinion, Chair, and if members agree, I think if the nominee is passed by this committee and the House, he will be able to answer sensitive questions while in office. But for now, I feel like we've exhausted. If members agree, we should leave it at that. But having said that, no, it's not a question, it's just a comment. The nominee, Chair,
is very well placed, having served in NIS before, and having served in your current capacity as ODPP. You indicated that you now know the gaps between intelligence and actioning that. Chair, if the nominee is passed by this committee, it will be very good for you to bring legislation that can seal these gaps. That will be your first assignment if you're passed by this committee. Thank you.
So, Mr. Noordin Haji, I'll give you the 3-4 minutes to still give your final remarks and your final plea for this committee to consider your nomination favorably. Please proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. First of all, maybe on the issue that you raised, I have often wondered why Section 66 of the ODPP, of the NIS Act, has not been operationalized, and that's the complaints board. I will go and look at why there has been delay. Maybe there are valid reasons as to why there have been delays to operationalize it. But I think that would be one way of ensuring that when there are complaints like this, these officers can be dealt with adequately. What I want to assure this committee is that I will strive to ensure that NIS observes the Constitution and the rule of law, and that we actually discharge our mandate within the Constitution and the constitutional frameworks that we have. And if confirmed, I want to assure you, Honorable Chair, members, and Kenyans in general, that I will try and ensure that NIS is a professional, efficient, effective organization guided by high fidelity to the Constitution and the law. I also want to commit myself to ensure that I work very closely with this committee as an oversight committee for Kenyans in general. So please rest assured that I will avail myself in person unless there are any reasons why, to come and ensure that you effectively discharge your mandate. Honorable Chair, I want to thank His Excellency the President for giving me this opportunity, and for this committee also for being very kind and allowing me to answer the questions and even attempting to give a long opening statement. Thank you, Honorable Chair, and I look forward to working. God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Haji. I can promise you that this committee is non-adversarial. We will be very objective in evaluating your suitability as the next Director General. We will soon retreat to write a report, extremely objective report. These people are very professional, and I just hope that they accord you that favor. Before then, I can only wish you all the best. You might leave at your pleasure. Just for the record, for the members of the press, it is that DPP Haji has given us all the statutory requirements. We have all of them here with us, and none has been left out. Thank you, Mr. Haji. You might leave at your pleasure.